Zay is here. Okay, now we can get started. It is 2:01 and I'm calling the meeting of the Legislative and Governmental Affairs Committee to order. Pursuant to the Illinois Attorney General's guidance to public bodies on the Open Meetings Act during the COVID-19 pandemic dated July 2nd, 2020, county board members may participate without being physically present in compliance with the established provisions. Cheryl, do we need a vote to allow those of us remote to participate or not?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
let's vote no.
You're not allowed to vote no, sorry.
I'll second that.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion to allow those attending remotely to participate in the meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Chair Desart?
Aye.
Member LaPlante?
Aye.
Member Renahan?
Aye.
Member Salmon? Member Zay?
Aye.
Member Chaplin?
Right. Thank you, that passes. So let's call to order and get a roll call vote now to for the meeting.
Member Chaplin?
Are here.
Chair Desart?
Here.
Member LaPlante?
Here.
Member Renahan?
Here.
Member Salmon? Member Zay?
Here.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the Legislative and Governmental Affairs meeting from Tuesday, May 25th, 2021.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Who is it that moved? Member Zay?
Aye.
Member Chaplin?
Aye.
Chair Desart?
Aye.
Member LaPlante?
Aye.
Member Renahan?
Aye.
Member Salmon?
Thank you. By way of chairman's remarks, I'd just like to let you know that Chairman Cronin and I put together a letter. Well, actually, Cheryl Marquet put together a letter, and we sent it to our members of Congress about these CSBG grants, saying, as Congress begins the task of preparing the fiscal year 2022 Labor, Health and Human Services and Education Appropriations Bill, we respectfully request that you pay particular attention to funding and poverty guidelines for the Community Services Block Grant. The Community Services Block Grant is a unique and valuable resource that enables DuPage County to address poverty and economic insecurity in innovative ways. DuPage County Department of Community Services is a local community action agency that was among the first to step up at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic to deliver critical services. So I'm not going to read the whole letter to you, but this letter went to, again, members of Congress to support us in that endeavor. Also, as far as chairman's remarks, we did get an update from our lobbyist, Mark Polis of Rauchi and Sullivan. He gave us a recap of the legislative session. He said, clean energy, despite an entire session of negotiations, the parties were unable to conclude with energy legislation. After a late deal was struck, the General Assembly simply ran out of time, but it's expected to reconvene in a month, at the end of the month of June, to take up the issue again. Gaming, a scaled back gaming bill passed the House, but was not called in the Senate. Fix the FOID, the General Assembly adjourned without passing changes to the FOID card. Police reform, HB 3443 represents a trailer bill to the Black Caucus Criminal Justice Reform passed in January. Key provisions include training, body cameras, use of force, duty to intervene, and other changes. And Mark Polis and company will forward the fall veto session dates to us when they're available. So those are my chairman's remarks. And now to talk about what else happened in Springfield in more detail is our other lobbyist, Chip Hume. Chip?
Trying to make sure, am I off mute, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
You are off mute and you are off camera. If you wanted to be on camera, you could be on camera, but I think you're on vacation this week, so maybe you want to be off camera.
No, I wish I was, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I appreciate your indulgence allowing me to call in. I'm kind of running around like crazy today. So I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. I know both firms, mine and Mark and Dave Sullivan, sent over pretty detailed quasi end of session reports. So I'll just kind of go over a couple high level things and then, more than happily take any questions from anyone on the committee. Unlike most years, this General Assembly did not adjourn May 31st at midnight, so we are technically at recess until the call of the chair. Both chambers were in until about 3, maybe 4 in the morning on June 1st, moving pieces of legislation. The May 31st deadline then requires, once you go past that midnight June 1st time, any piece of legislation that you're voting on that has an immediate effective date requires a 3/5 majority. In both chambers, there are super majorities of Democrats in both chambers, so that date is not as much of a big deal as it is when the numbers are a little closer. So that's, I think, why they stayed in so late. Some things that they will be back for, the Senate passed the elected school board in Chicago. That needs to be acted on in the House. It sounds like the Senate will be back next Monday or Tuesday to take up the energy bill. I have not, as of late, seen a draft of it, but I believe there is a deal with the Exelon quote-unquote nuke bailout. And then there are provisions of, my understanding, there will be provisions of the Clean Energy Jobs Act in that negotiated piece of legislation, solar credits, decarbonization goals, those sort of things. The last outliers in that energy bill were the municipally owned coal plants, which I know were dates that people were working through. So those two things hang out there. Obviously, the General Assembly needs to meet at some point and pass a set of congressional maps, or a congressional map rather, which has not been done yet. So that will be taken up, I would assume, a little bit later in the summer. From our side specifically, we did pretty well this General Assembly. I would say we were able to protect our LDGF. A number of our needs were met in that election omnibus bill. Our main capital projects were reappropriated in the new capital bill. When the budget was passed, they included $1 billion of a line item to spur some capital projects. I'm not, obviously wish I could tell you that our capital projects would be included in that $1 billion mark, but that is a little bit of a moving target for us that we're still chasing. So mainly our 2 water projects and also our $5 million for the mental health treatment facility were reappropriated and in the new capital bill. So all in all, we did pretty well from the animal side. I know this is important to Chair to start. The puppy mill ban of selling commercially bred dogs was passed. Got a little nervous there at the end. We unfortunately had to wait till the last day of session to kind of wrangle it through, but that did pass, as well as another piece of legislation we supported, which capped the fees or interest rates that can be charged on purchasing animals. So a lot more done in the General Assembly than I can sum up in a couple of minutes. They passed their maps, so Senate and House maps are out. I know everybody is feverishly taking a look at them, trying to see which district is which, and the numbers have changed and who's written in with who. But it's the fun of every 10 years, kind of seeing what the landscape looks like. So, Madam Chair, that's just my brief overview. I am more than happy to take any questions from yourself or members.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, Chip, thank you so much, because I know that the chairman of the Animal Services Committee, Brian Krajewski, and I made a ton of phone calls to legislators about that House Bill 1711, the puppy mill ban, and I know that you did a ton of work, so thank you so much. When that passed, I felt like it was Christmas morning. I was so happy. So thank you so much for all of your work on that, and also the disreputable lender legislation. Committee, do you have any questions for Chip? I can't see in the room. If you do, just jump on in if you do. All right. Sounds like you did a thorough job, Chip. Thank you so much. Appreciate you when you come on this committee. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. And if anyone has anything, I think everyone knows how to get a hold of me. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm always more than happy to talk to anybody. Thank you
so much. Have a great day.
Thank you much. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The only piece of business that we have is an action item. We tabled this last time, the Senate Bill 1, and that's the election reform bill. And I have had a couple of conversations with our clerk, who really wants us to support this as a county. And she said, we really want to be on the record as a county, trying to get federal money for new election equipment. So that's the main reason that that she is suggesting that we support this. So I move that we support S1 through a federal lobbyist. Can I get a second? And then we'll do discussion, Jim, or members A. Can I get a second on this?
Second.
Okay, so I moved, Member Chaplin was the second. Members A, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. You know, we heard from Congressman Caston, this really has nothing to do with voting equipment. This is the Voting Rights Act. I mean, this is really nothing to do with us. This is more about federalizing elections than it is us getting election equipment. He even said there's no appropriations for this and we shouldn't look to it. So I don't understand why we're getting involved in this national debate on this when all that's in the bill has really been taken care of by the state of Illinois. I mean, we're not one of those states that are trying to, you know, diminish people's rights to vote. I mean, again, I don't know why we're getting involved in this at this point.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, thank you, if I may, Chairwoman. So it's my understanding that there is language in this for election equipment, and that's, from what I understand, that's the reason why we're looking for support, because we would like to, the clerk would like to start looking for funds to pay back the reserves. I think last time our election equipment was purchased, a HAVA grant was available and they were able to use some of that money for the equipment. So I think that's why she's looking for support. Is there anything in that, do we have any language in the bill that supports the election equipment?
Well, one of the things that the clerk said to me is that back in 2002, when the HAVA passed, it was retroactive to when the county purchased voting equipment in 2001. So that was one of the things that Congressman Caston wasn't sure about, if we could get the money retroactively. And what happened when this occurred in 2002, we were able to recoup the money retroactively. Other comments? Member Renahan.
Sorry, I'm out of practice on my Zooming. Anyway, looking at the information that you provided us in the packet, I mean, it does say provides HAVA funds to implement voter registration modernization forms. It also addresses funds grants to improve voter accessibility for persons with disabilities. So I think, you know, obviously there are some financial benefits here that I can see, at least. I mean, Cheryl, am I wrong?
I'm just looking at this 22-page summary for the People Act, and on page 9, it does say that the Election Assistant Commission shall make grants available to states to replace voting machines and to work on cyber security. I think the point that Member Zay was saying is that there's no money specifically attached to this. That would have to come later in another bill, if I understand the federal process correctly, but it lays out a grant program for voting equipment and election security, but it doesn't provide the funding in this particular bill. I think that's what the congressman said.
Okay.
Well, I know if you're looking for specific language, in Part 1, Section 3001, it does say grants for obtaining compliant paper ballot voting systems and carrying out voting system security improvements. Section 3002, coordination of voting system security activities with use of requirements, payments and election administration requirements under the HAVA Act of 2002, grants for risk limiting audits of results of elections. And I've got several pages that you don't want me to read through because it'll take too long, but there definitely is language in here in S1 for the county to potentially recoup some of the money. Member Chaplin.
Yeah, so thank you. So they have, in S1, they have a plan for what they want to use federal dollars for. And it did mention voting machines and cybersecurity, and then they will fund it at a later date. So, you know, I think if we can get, if this bill passes and it then gets funded, I think that would be a great way for us to get our money back. So those are my comments. I think it's a great way for us to advocate for those funds so that we can, you know, because it's going to be a huge chunk out of our reserves. And if we can pay that back, I think that would be well worth it.
And my thought is just getting on a record for our constituents, just to know that we're trying to get federal money for this instead of having to take it out of reserves. Other comments, questions? Members A?
So if we didn't support this, we would not get federal funds. That's what I'm hearing. I mean, you're reading 3 paragraphs off of this. We know this is not a bipartisan bill in the United States Congress. There's no Republican sponsors at all. We're hearing the other day that one Democrat is against it. It's probably not going to pass. So, I mean, if you guys are looking to get the Republicans on a bad vote, I guess this is what you want to do. But this really has nothing to go forward. I mean, if you guys want to go ahead and give felons the right to vote, you know, I mean, they want to redistricting. They want to give it to a federal commission and take it away from the states, which is in the Constitution. I mean, I've got a long list of stuff that we can go through. But, you know, again, Illinois is not one of these states that is taking away people's rights to vote, which this seems to be, you know, in reaction to. And again, if it was about, and it said specifically there was an appropriation for funding of election machines, I'd be all for it. But it's such a small part of it. I mean, if that's what you guys want to do, I mean, that's fine. I'm the only Republican on here, but, you know, again, there's so much in this bill and there's such a small portion on election equipment. And again, the clerk should be looking for this ahead of time. I talked to Scott McKay 6 months ago. It's not the county board's job to get funding for this. It's clerk's job to go out and do the grants. And we'll help all we can, but it's their job to do that. And we'll help them as much as we can. But again, we can't apply for grants for them. They have to apply for themselves.
Member Chapman?
If I may, yeah. And the clerk is well aware of that, and she is. But I think getting the board behind this, supporting S1, will give our lobbyist the green light to tell everybody in Washington that DuPage County is supporting S1 and to get behind it. You know, Jean doesn't have a whole board, but Jean is working as well. Jean's the one that brought this to our attention to see if we can get behind it, because it sends a strong message to our congressional representatives that we're supporting this and that they should get behind it. So, and maybe others, because I know when our lobbyists are down there, they lobby everybody down there. So that's why I believe it was brought before this committee. But she is looking for other resources, other grants. She has found, you know, she's good at doing that. But, you know, that's my understanding.
And if I could just add, I think the bigger picture is that as a legislative committee, we would help any countywide. If Darlene Rossetti had any legislation she'd like us to look at, we'd certainly do that. If the auditor did or the clerk of courts did, we would certainly look at any legislation that any of the other electeds would bring before us. So any other comments, questions? Anybody in the room? Okay, Teresa, can we take a vote? There's been a motion and a second.
Chair to start.
Aye.
Member LaPlante?
Aye.
Member Renahan?
Aye.
Member Selman? Member Zay?
No.
Member Chaplin?
Aye.
4 ayes.
Okay, so that motion passes that the county will support S1 through a federal lobbyist. Do we have any old business? Member Vice Chair Zay.
Well, it passed. Doesn't this have to go to the full county board, next county board meeting?
I believe so, right, Cheryl?
I don't know. It's, to be honest, the bill list normally doesn't go, but it just, you know, the bill list that I do during session doesn't go to board. I don't know if it's more of a state attorney question. I don't know, because it's a separate item, but the bill list that I do during session doesn't, but I don't know about this.
Okay.
Cheryl, just to be on the safe side, since the vice chairman brought up the question, let's go ahead and run it by the state's attorney just to see if we need to bring this to the full board, just to be safe. We want to cross off all of our T's and dot all of our I's.
Well, the bill list is normally consensus, and I think this doesn't sound like a consensus, so probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will get back to you all with a confirmation as to whether or not that needs to take place.
Thank you so much. All right, any other old business? Any new business? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Anyone? Second, moved by Vice Chair Zay, seconded by Member Chaplin. Roll call, please, Teresa.
Member Zay?
Aye.
Member Chaplin?
Aye.
Chair Desart?
Aye.
Member LaPlante?
Aye.
Member Renahan? Member Renahan?
Aye.
Member
All right. All right, we stand adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.